Hello folks, and welcome back yet again for another day in the garage with me. Today we are going back yet again to the Silmarillion, as you would have expected. I know you expect nothing different. Got a very short chapter today. I think it's only 4 pages, and I've already gotten started on this. This is my Savinelli Porto Corvo 122. It is one of my very favorite pipes, and I wish I could get this turned into a church warden. I really like the longer stems, but this gigantic wide mouth, it's just enormous. And I've tried buying extra long stems, and I can never find one that fits nicely, and it's just not going to happen. But we're back to the Silmarillion today, and I wanted to show you something very special. This is my first edition. Now, it's a first U.S. edition, which means first U.S. printing of Silmarillion. Is that groovy? How amazing is this? First U.S. printing edition. Copyright 1977, George Allen and Unwin Publishers. And believe it or not, it has the map still intact. We still have the map of Balerians in there. It's a black and white line map with the bright red. Now, let me just show it to you guys. It's such a special map. It is still attached inside there, but look at that. How beautiful. How beautiful is that? So we're not taking that out. I will not be reading from the first edition today, but I did want to show it to you. It's super cool. We're going to be reading from our old beater copy that I don't mind messing up. So as I told you yesterday, we're trying to do a chapter of the Quenta Silmarillion every day. And today's day 2. So hey, this is 2 in a row. That's an accomplishment, right? This is more of that Boswell cherry cobbler. If you were here in the room with me or in the garage, you'd think, wow, I think somebody's baking a cherry cobbler in there. Well, maybe not. Man, it's getting to be time to trim the old sideburns there, isn't it? That's starting to get a little bit lengthy. Uncool. Enough with this jibber jabber. We are back to the Quenta Silmarillion, and as I promised you yesterday, we are up to of Aulë and Yavanna, chapter 2 of the Quenta. And again, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. We're just going to touch on some really cool and interesting things, some amazing parts of this. But if you want to know about Aulë or Yavanna, this is where you start. This is just a few pages of what they get into and what they're up to. But if you're interested in more about Aulë or the Dwarves or the creation of the Dwarves, how Dwarves came to be, there's just a little bit in the Silmarillion, but I would definitely recommend that you dig into a few of the other basically post... what's that word when something's issued after some posthumous after somebody dies? The War of the Jewels. Spend some time on Aulë. You can find out something about Aulë and Yavanna in The Lost Road. The Peoples of Middle-earth. The Shaping of Middle-earth touches on him slightly. And there's a little bit in the Book of Lost Tales. Don't get the Book of Lost Tales confused with The Lost Road. I think Aulë might be mentioned in both of those now that I think about it. If nothing else, they give some extra names for Aulë in these books. I know that Yavanna is called Queen of the Earth and Bosom of the Earth in a couple of those extra volumes. And Aulë is called... he's called the Dwarf Father. He's called a Smith. He's called a Maker. Something like World Artificer or something like this. Yeah, Aulë. Aulë and Yavanna. Let's dig in. Just to kick things off, I'll read the opening sentences or so. It is told that in their beginning, the dwarves were made by Aulë in the darkness of Middle-earth, for so greatly did Aulë desire the coming of the children to have learners to whom he could teach his lore and his crafts, that he was unwilling to await the fulfillment of the designs of Iluvatar. So we could call him Mr. Impatience Pants if we wanted to. He knew that the children of Iluvatar, the elves, and eventually the men would be coming, but he didn't know what they were going to be. He didn't know that they would be the elves or the men. He knew that there were children who were going to be coming, and he couldn't wait. He wanted to teach beings. He wanted to instruct them. So being Mr. Impatient Pants, Aulë created the dwarves. And Aulë made the dwarves even as they still are, meaning the way they look today, that's how they were when he made them. Because the forms of the children who were to come were unclear to his mind, and because the power of Melkor was yet over the earth, and he wished therefore that they should be strong and unyielding. But fearing that the other Valar might blame his work, he wrought in secret. And that's how you can always tell when someone is perhaps beginning to go astray, when they start doing things in secret. You guys know I love my Gatorade. Too much sugar. And he made first the 7 fathers of the dwarves in a hall under the mountains in Middle-earth. So there you've got your 7 fathers of the dwarves. How many rings did the dwarves get? 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 7 for the dwarves in their halls of stone. Now, Iluvatar knew what Aulë had done, and the very moment he did it, he was aware of it and perceived it. And he went and talked to Aulë and said, "What do you think you're doing? You have the power only for yourself that I put in you." He gives them kind of a speech which basically says, I put the secret fire in you, but that does not give you the right to try to put the secret fire in these other creatures. You don't actually have that ability. And to prove it, he points out that like these creatures that you're talking to, and he had started to teach them a language that he made up and started to teach them how to make things. Like he's the smith, he's the maker. So he started teaching them all these skills. And Iluvatar points out to him that they're only awake when you're thinking of them. If you turn your mind to something else, they're going to go completely still. They're going to be like automatons, puppets. They're just going to be like empty marionettes, and you let go of the string. So, of course, Aulë repents correctly. Unlike our good friend Melkor, Aulë says, I did not desire lordship. I desired things other than I am to love and to teach them, so that they too might perceive the beauty of Ea. And then he goes on about how there's all this room in the world, and he's really anxious for these children to come and see all this wonderful stuff. And then he makes an interesting argument. I'm going to quote him here. He says, in my impatience I have fallen into folly, yet the making of things is in my heart from my own making by thee. He says, you made me this way, and I'm like you. You made me, and you made me a maker, and I'm making things, and so of course I would want to make people the way you made people. He says, the child of little understanding that makes a play of the deeds of his father may do so without thought of mockery, but because he is the son of his father. That's a good argument. That's a humble argument. That's not saying I want to make a bunch of people that I can rule over, and they'll call me God, and I can tell them what to do and demand them to do whatever. No, he doesn't say that. He says, you made me as you were a maker making me. You created me like you, and now I want to make other people. But then he says, but what do I do now, right? He says, don't be mad at me. Are you going to be mad at me forever? Please don't. I'll destroy these people I made. I will wipe them out. And he picks up, an axe or a hammer? I forget. Then Aulë took up a great hammer to smite the dwarves, and he wept. But Iluvatar had compassion on Aulë and his desire because of his humility. And the dwarves, this is interesting, the dwarves shrank from the hammer and were afraid, and they bowed down their heads and begged for mercy, which Aulë uses in his own argument back to, or rather I should say, Iluvatar uses that fact in his own argument back to Aulë. This is interesting. He says, thy offer I accepted even it was made. Dost thou not see that these things have now a life of their own and speak with their own voices? And I'll prove it to you. He says, else they would have not flinched from thy blow, nor from any command of thy will. So these fact that they're flinching back and the dwarves are saying, don't kill us, proves they're alive. And now they have a will of their own. So Aulë throws down his hammer. He says, may Eru bless my work and amend it. And Iluvatar says, listen, I'm going to let them stay. I'm not going to change them. They're going to be the way you made them. They're going to be little shrinky-dink, stocky guys. They're going to be like they're going to look like dwarves, aren't they? I'm not going to change them, but there's one thing I will say. He says, first of all, they are not going to wake up before my own children. They're not going to get to be around. So Iluvatar puts them to sleep, and he puts them under the mountains to sleep until after the awakening of the elves by the lake of Cuivianen. When they first open their eyes and they see the stars and the elves awake, and they call themselves the firstborn. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but there's some dwarves sleeping in the mountains that were technically here first. Technically. There's a little section here that's kind of cool, that they were made, because they were made in the time of Melkor was still around. They were made hardy and strong. They suffered toil and hunger and hurt of body more heartily than all other speaking peoples. Now, what happens to dwarves when they die? Nobody's 100% positive, but the dwarves, they have a theory. The dwarves say that Aulë the Maker, who they call Malhal, cares for them and gathers them to Mandos in halls set apart. So when elves' bodies are killed somehow, by like Balrogs or something, their bodies are destroyed, but their spirit goes to the hall of Mandos for waiting. Their Feyre is prepared until it's ready to, re-inhabit a new body. It's not reincarnation, it's returning. More like resurrection into a different set of duds. But these guys, they go into a different place, but similar. Mandos brings them into halls set apart. Interesting, set apart is the word that, the word holy means set apart. And Tolkien would have known that the word holy or hallowed means something set apart. So it's interesting that he uses that phrase. Gathers them to Mandos in halls set apart. And this is still what the dwarves think. They declared to their fathers of old that Iluvatar will hallow them and give them a place among the children in the end, and that their part shall be to serve Aulë and to aid him in the remaking of Arda after the last battle. So they believe they got a really cool future at the end of time, right? The end of days. And there's a little bit where it goes on now about what was Yavanna up to. He hid this from all the Valar, like I said, but eventually he told her what he had been doing, and she was not crazy about this. She knew, first of all, the fact that you hid this from me means I couldn't participate at all in their making, which means they're not going to like my stuff. And Yavanna stuff is things that grow. Trees, plants, grass, weeds, trees that light up the world, anything like that. So, she says these guys are gonna like cut down my trees. These trees take forever to grow, and you can cut them down in 10 minutes. And unless a tree even gives you nice fruit, no one's even gonna care about them, these guys. And she's really upset about it. So she goes to Manwë, the king of all of the Valar, and she says to him, this has really got me bummed out. And then, he talks to her about how she feels about it. Basically, she says, I hold trees dear, long in the growing, swift shall they be in the felling. I see in my thought, would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things and punish those that wrong them. So she says, I wish the trees could punish everybody. And what does Manwë, the king, say? He says, this is a strange thought. He's like, but she's like, it's a strange thought, but it was in the song, because when we were weaving the original song during the original music, this is stuff that came to me and I was singing it, and everybody's ignoring it. It was part of the song and everybody's ignoring it. So Manwë sits silently. He thinks about it for a while, and it seems to him the song rose more once about him, and he heeded now many things therein that though he had heard them, he had not heeded before. And at last a vision was renewed, and yet he saw that all was upheld by the hand of Iluvatar. And so he's like, I knew it, but I didn't know it. I saw it, but I didn't see it. I heard it, but I didn't hear it. You're right, that was part of the song all along. And he perceived more clearly how everything was related to the music. You guys like my hat? I just noticed my hat looks on camera right there. Let me show you my little pin. What do you think of that? We're at the end of the prancing pony there. I like these wool hats. This is a different one than the one I had on yesterday, but I have a few of these wool hats. It might be summertime and hot outside, but wool is an interesting material. So Manwë goes back to Yavanna. He says, Eru hath spoken, saying, Do any of the Valar suppose I did not hear all of the song, even the least voice? Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the trees and the bushes, and some will dwell therein and be held in reverence. And here's where he gets to the cool thing. He basically says, we're going to take care of the trees. I got a plan for the trees too. So Manwë tells all this stuff, and she was glad, and she goes back to her buddy Aulë, which is, I mean, it's not her buddy, it's her husband. They're married. She goes back to Aulë, and she says, only the trees of Aulë will be tall enough. Oh, this is because she was talking to Manwë about these trees are going to be so gigantic that nothing can be higher than them. And he's like, no, they're not going to be that tall. He says, no, only the trees of Aulë will be tall enough. In the mountains, the eagles will house and hear the voices of those who call upon us. But in the forests shall walk the shepherds of the trees. There's her answer. The shepherds of the trees will protect the trees and the forests. And who are the shepherds? I don't need to tell you. You don't have to even have ever read the Silmarillion to know who the shepherds of the trees are, right? It's our old buddy, the Ents. Treebeard, Quickbeam. I can't think of any other Ents names right now. That's just terrible. That's sad. Well, you know there's more. So, and then Manwë and Yavanna parted for a time, and Yavanna went back to her husband Aulë. He's in his smithy pouring molten metal like you do. You know, he's doing his thing. And she says, Eru is bountiful. Now let thy children beware, for there shall walk a power in the forests whose wrath they will arouse at their peril. She's basically saying, your guys better be careful. If they whip out their axes all the time, you better watch out for those shepherds. And we saw that in Lord of the Rings, didn't we? When Aragorn warned Gimli about his axe when they approached the trees of Fangorn. And he's like, don't put your axe on any living tree. Trust me, these shepherd guys, when they finally meet Treebeard, he's not fond of that axe. He says, no, I only use this on orcs. Don't worry. It's cool. And to finish off the chapter, we're on the last page. To finish it off, nonetheless, they will have need of wood, said Aulë. You can say what you want, honey, but there's going to be strife between my people and your trees. It's just how it's going to be. We will see that. So tomorrow's chapter will be great. This is going to be tomorrow of the coming of the elves and the captivity of Melkor, his first time in jail. Yeah, he's going to go to jail for a short time. Let's see how. That's not a very long chapter either. Yeah, it's like 4 pages again. So we'll be right through that tomorrow. We'll aim at that tomorrow. In the meantime, as you can well imagine, this has gone out. Pipes go out a lot. If you start talking too much, it's a good thing about pipes. They make you talk less. So no rain today, but it's supposed to rain in a little while. I don't know if we're going to have another one of those gully washers like we did yesterday. But that's all I have for you guys today now. You can go away now, as the man says. I think I'll read a little bit more here on my own, but I won't hold you up. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.